What's up? This is me, Devin, aka your favorite urban gardener, aka Plant Vibes. And I wanted to talk about a cool concept that I've been reading a little bit about lately, and that is the idea of turning disadvantages or perceived disadvantages in the garden and using those to inspire you to create an advantage out of those disadvantages. And this is an idea that I have been reading about from one of my absolute favorite garden designers, a gentleman by the name of Russell Page, who is absolutely one of the very best garden designers across the globe during the 20th century. And his philosophy was, all right, if I am designing a garden and it has a such and such disadvantage, why not use that disadvantage to inspire an advantage? So for instance, let's say you have a garden that you think is, oh, it's just so shady, I can't grow anything cool. Well, why not let that inspire you to create the luscious garden possible? Or you say, oh, my soil, it's so crappy and rocky and junky. Well, why not let that inspire you to research plants that are native to rocky, craggy areas, and then you can have this garden full of these plants that thrive in those conditions. Or let's say you just have this huge, open, expansive yard that's just in this full baking sun and you don't even know where to start. Well, this is an easy way to turn that disadvantage into an advantage. Why not plant a tree right in the middle of that area and let it create this shady canopy? So these are some of the ideas of taking a disadvantage and turning it into an advantage. Now, for me in my urban garden, I live on a 5th floor apartment where on a relatively busy road where the wind is just going south to north all day, every day. And the first 2 years that I was living here, the plants that I chose, they didn't like it because they were plants that, everyone says, oh, you need to plant this in your urban garden or your containers or your window boxes, blah, 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 blah. And they were they didn't like that because they were getting way too much wind. They were drying out, all sorts of things that made them unhappy. So recently I decided to change up the plants that are the most exposed to those windy conditions. And the plants that I chose were, I'll just show you. So first of all, I chose this gorgeous hardy geranium right here. And unfortunately it's not in flower right now, but when it was, you can see this beautiful mounded growth. It just kind of billows back and forth, just kind of like, It doesn't have like super long stems, so I don't have to fear that it's gonna, all the stems are gonna break off one day. And when it's in flower, it's totally a gem to see, just swaying back and forth. And then the next plant that I chose was this beautiful, excuse me, this gorgeous little hamlin, which is this kind of dwarf pennisetum. And not only is that a plant that can handle the wind, it looks exceptional with the wind. That is truly a case of taking that disadvantage and turning it into advantage, because it's a plant that uses that disadvantage of the wind and is accentuated by that disadvantage. And then the final plant that I chose was this beautiful little dianthus. This is a super trooper dianthus, and I chose these because for one, they're low growers, and for two, they produce fragrant flowers. Now, the thing about fragrant flowers and the wind is, well, if you want that fragrance to kind of perfume your apartment or your home, you gotta have some wind. So what better plant to choose than a plant that is gonna be perfect for those windy conditions by bringing that fragrance into my life, into my nostrils day in and day out, which you just saw that they're just starting to flower. So I'm excited to have that fragrance wafting through my apartment over the coming week. So this is just kind of a way to start thinking about, if you have these preconceived ideas of what may be considered a disadvantage in your particular garden, change the thinking that you have behind it. Don't let it hinder you. Let it inspire you. Let it force you to do research, to find plants that are suitable for those conditions. Allow it to be a creative driving force for you. And then you'll go from being kind of sad and somber to happy and elated and like, oh man, I did something pretty cool there. So anyways, just a little plant inspiration, I hope, from your favorite urban gardener, me, Devin, aka Plant Vibes.